Got good news for ANZ customers today. The decision from the ANZ to pass the rate cut through in full to both home loans and business is certainly welcome. But I think what it does is throw the gauntlet down to the other big banks in particular to pass this rate cut through in full. Here in Queensland, you'd be aware that one bank, the QT Mutual Bank, has already passed the rate cut through in full. And I think we need to see a pass-through in full from the other major banks in the days ahead.
Do you think this is as a result of government pressure?
Well, I think it's I think that ANZ have decided to give their customers a fair go. But the fact is that the decision from the Reserve Bank to cut rates is the result of disciplined budget policy in particular, and the Reserve Bank's assessment that inflation is contained. It demonstrates why the government's decision to come back to surplus is so important, because what it does is give the Reserve Bank flexibility when it comes to monetary policy. We have now had the equivalent of 5 interest rate cuts since last November. If you've got a $300,000 mortgage for a standard variable rate, you are now paying something like $3,500 a year less in repayments than you were when the Liberals were last in government. On top of that, we've had a week of very good economic news. We've had a rate cut from the Reserve Bank. We've had very solid and strong results in the national accounts, strong employment growth, and now today, this pass-through from the ANZ. It's been a week of good economic news for the country and a week of embarrassment for Mr Abbott and Mr Hockey, who just go and talk our country down every day of the week.
Do you encourage customers to leave the ANZ?
The government has put in place a range of measures to enhance competition and make it easier for customers to walk down the road and get a better deal. And I think customers will walk down the road and get a better deal if they don't see the full pass-through from the major banks following this decision from the ANZ. They will rightly be very upset with their bank if we don't see a full pass-through from the major banks.
Just something completely left field and a more parochial question. Anna Blight's government spent $1 million on artwork at the new court precinct, and there are people saying it's nice.
Well, I haven't seen the artwork. I haven't seen the facts of the matter. I'm not going to comment on it. I mean, what I'm dealing with here is a week, an exceptional week in the life of the Australian national economy, where the hard work of millions of workers and small businesses has really paid off. We've seen interest rate cuts, we've seen strong GDP growth, and we've seen strong employment growth. We've seen all of that in the face of the global uncertainty. I think it's a week for Australians to say it's been a good week for Australia, and I'm proud of what Australians have achieved over the past few months.
On a matter of national economic importance, I guess, how do you have a view there on Greenpeace taking up full-page advertisements in Asian newspapers urging people not to invest in Australia?
Well, I think that's deplorable. We don't need Mr Abbott, Mr Hockey or anyone else talking down our economy. Australia's a great place to invest, and indeed investment in Australia is growing strongly. And you can see that in the national accounts. You can see it in the $500 billion investment pipeline in resources in particular. And the government is determined to ensure that investment remains strong by having good economic settings, by bringing our budget back to surplus, by making sure we've got tight fiscal policy and making sure we make the investments in infrastructure to ensure that we're not only prosperous, but we can spread the benefits of the boom right around our economy.
What sort of message do you think that sends, though, to Asian decision makers in particular? And it's aimed quite specifically at them, saying that this drama over GVK and Hancock's approval this week, this is what you can expect in Australia.
Well, I think it's deplorable and it should be condemned, and I do condemn it in the strongest possible terms. The government is committed to a strong investment pipeline across our resources industry, which is why we are also determined to put in place strict environmental safeguards. Now, we've had to pull the Queensland government into line on that question this week, but we certainly don't need to see this sort of obnoxious behaviour from Greenpeace. Thank you.
The Treasurer Wayne Swan speaking there.